Start. So everyone can hear me? Everyone can see the screen? Just type in the chat that everyone can see the screen so that I can continue. Cool. Nice. So let's start. So today we're gonna learn about random forest. So previously I taught you about decision trees. So random forest is just like a bunch of decision trees doing the same thing, guessing the same output for the same input to make it more generalized. Now you may think that if you're generating same random trees for same data set, it's gonna be completely identical. So it's not useful to make more than one random decision trees. Hold on. इसमें नहीं लिख सकती है, पढ़ लो. So that. Now, before starting decision trees, I'll tell you about one of the technique which is known as ensemble technique. So in ensemble technique, what we do is, so ensemble technique is not a it's a machine learning technique, but it's not a full algorithm. So in ensemble learning technique, to make your model more accurate or to make your model more generalized, you try to club together more than one algorithm. It's like you're trying to club logistic regression and linear regression together, or trying to make two logistic regression and algorithm or two logistic regression model work on the same data to make it more accurate. So this is ensemble technique. So in ensemble you have two different two subtypes, which is known as bagging and one is known as boosting. In bagging, the number of the machine learning model that you made for ensembling, they all are gonna be completely independent of each other. Just like random forest is a bagging technique. So all the decision trees that you will make will be completely independent of the other decision tree. It means all the decision tree are taking their own decisions. They are not related to any of the decisions which the other tree is taking. And uh, the answer, like how to tell that which is the answer, we just go and see like the votes. Like if you have a random forest of 10 decision trees and 8 decision trees saying yes and 2 decision trees are saying no, it means because it's a boosting bagging algorithm, so we bag the 8 answers and then give us the output that okay, because in our random forest it gives 8 true and 2 false, so we'll get true as the answer. In boosting, what happens? In boosting, all the models that you make for the ensemble is dependent on each other. It means you train it on the first model, and all the advantages or all the weights that you get for the first model will be transferred to the second model. And all the things that you do for the second model will transfer to the third model. So this is not a boosting technique. We're not going to learn any boosting technique because it doesn't come in the basics one. But I'll at the end, if I'll get some time, I'll try to collections. So if I'll try to explain you one or two boosting stuff also. If at the end of the class, like at the end of this whole mentorship program, if I'll get some time, I'll try to explain some boosting stuff also, so that you'll know what exactly they are. Now, coming to random forest now. So random forest is a bagging technique. So what exactly we do in random forest? So the only thing which is different in a decision tree and a random forest is the technique, how we use our data set. Now, in the previous class, as you remember, we took this particular data set, which you can see, the play tennis data set. We took all the attributes, all the rows, and tried to build a random forest. Sorry, we'll try to build a decision trees in that. But in random forest, what we do, we make bootstrap data sets depending upon how many how many decision tree you want in a random forest. Just for example, in this one, sorry. So in this particular random forest that we're gonna build, we're gonna have only 4 decision trees. It's not like when you're gonna do it in a machine, like in a coding, you're not gonna go for 4 and 5. You go for like 10, 15, 20, something like that. So currently, just for example purpose, we are taking a random forest with 4 decision trees. So if you have 4 decision trees, it means you'll have 4 bootstrap data set. Now, what is a bootstrap data set? Bootstrap data set is a type of data set that you, okay, just hold on. Someone is not able to join for some reason. Let's see. What happened? Is it not in the... Okay. Let's ring all of them again. Okay. So nice that you're back. Now we'll go to the same page that we are doing. So in a random forest, we are going to make 4 decision trees, and for 4 decision trees, we are going to make 4 different bootstrap data set. Now, what is the bootstrap data set? Bootstrap data set is just a subset of your main data set in which you randomly select some rows and some features. Now, what exactly mean by some rows and some features? Just imagine we have to make, let me take this pencil and take a brush like this. Way too thick. So just imagine we have to make one decision tree here, one decision tree for this one decision tree for this one decision tree for this one. Now, for this first decision tree, we are going to make a bootstrap dataset. To make a bootstrap dataset, what we do is we randomly select any of the rows from the main dataset. Like imagine we selected this one, this one, this one, this one, anyone. It's not any algorithm that you have to choose this or that. So you can choose any of the random dataset, random attributes from the dataset to make a bootstrap dataset. Now, one of the rule of bootstrap dataset is you can have repeated values. You can take that, okay, first row, like imagine you have, in this you have 5 rows. So this is the first row for this one. This is the third row. This is the fourth row. This is the sixth row. And even this is the sixth row. So you can take any one row even twice or thrice in a bootstrap dataset. It's allowed. So this is how you create a bootstrap dataset that take random values, random rows from the dataset and keep it in your, just save it in a someplace as a bootstrap dataset. Now, it's generally advisable that if you're building a bootstrap dataset, make sure that it's as big as the main dataset. It means if you have 14 rows, then make sure even this has 14 rows. And there's one thing that you can do in bootstrap dataset is repeating the rows. So you can just take multiple rows and repeat it to make it as big as you want. It can even be smaller than the main dataset. It can be even bigger than the main dataset. It's fine, but it's generally advisable to make it equal to the dataset. Okay, that's what you do in bootstrapping dataset. Now for the second also, you're going to do the same thing. Third also, you're going to do the same thing. Any random values for the fourth. Now, just for just imagine that you took these two, you consider all these rows, but in all the bootstrapping data set, you never considered, let's change the color. Like you never considered this one, bad color. You never considered this data set and this data set. Just for now, just imagine that you never considered this one and this one. It means in any of the bootstrap data set, this particular row is not there and this particular row is not there. So just remember it. We'll talk about this later. Now, all your bootstrap data set is ready. Now what you have to do, you have to make a decision tree. Now to make a decision tree, you have to follow the exact rule that we have used in the previous class. Finding the entropy, finding the information gain, and splitting the data, splitting the features on the basis of the information gain. Now there's one more thing that you can do. Now you can see for all that bootstrap dataset that you have, you will have all the four features, which is outlook, temperature, humidity, and wind. But when you're doing the classification, like when you're doing the splitting, you can randomly select which one you want to consider. Just imagine for the root node, what is the rule that consider for each and every feature and then find out which one is the best one. But because it's a random forest, so the decision tree can randomly select which attributes to select which attributes to not. क्यों? पापा कहाँ जा रहे? 2 minutes guys, I have to close the door. I'll be back. Hello, sorry for the delay. I had to close my door. So yeah, now the bootstrap data set has been done. Now we are building the decision trees. Now considering the root node in the decision tree, we take care of all the features that is available and find out the information gain for all the features and find out which one is the best one. But in the random forest decision trees, we can just randomly select which one we can consider, which one we should not. Now it's advisable that you should go for the square root of the number of features. So if the number of features is 4, taking the square root will give you 2. So for each and every node, you have to consider any of the randomly selected 2 features. So for the first root node, we selected only outlook and temperature. We're just trying to find out which one is the best one between outlook and temperature. And then when this is done, now these two nodes are available to fill. Now for this one, we consider only humidity and wind, or only temperature and humidity. It's completely random. You can do anything. Now it's advisable to do this. It's not a handwritten rule, so it can go like plus one minus one can happen. So this is how you make a decision tree in a random forest. You just randomly select any of the rows, and after selecting random rows, you just randomly select which feature you want to split the data into and then build a decision tree. And the same thing I'm going to do for the second one, third one, and the fourth one. When everything has been done, so you'll have your own decision tree. You have your own decision tree, which will give you the answer. Now, every decision tree has been trained to give you the same output. That is it play tennis yes or play tennis no. But they had been trained on different kind of data because we have randomly selected the data and different kind of features also, that which features they are focusing on, which features they are not focusing on. So doing that, we'll get one answer from the first decision tree. We'll get one answer from the second decision tree. We'll get one answer from the third and one answer from the fourth. Taking the example, just imagine we get one instance. Like just take this instance only. Outlook rainy, temperature mild, humidity high, and wind true. Now we have this particular instance. We have to find out the Platonist is yes and no. We'll take this particular instance and run it through the first decision tree. It gave no. Just for imagine that it gave no. We ran through the second decision tree. It also gave no as the answer. We ran through the third decision tree. It gave yes as the answer. For the fourth, it gave no as the answer. So what is the probability of yes to no? So you'll get 3 yes and 2 no. It means because it's a bagging technique, so we'll just go, 3 yes and 1 no. Only 1 no. So because it's a bagging technique, we just go to the biggest number. Like which one is telling the most number of times. So yes has been said 3 times and no has been said 1 time. It means we'll consider 3. So this is how a random forest works. Now, one thing that I have told you to remember is these datasets which are not used in the Bootstrap datasets. So these are known as out of bag datasets or out of book dataset. So because of the Bootstrap, it's known as out of boots dataset or out of bag dataset, anything you can call out. So these datasets can be used to find out the accuracy or the precision because you have this particular data set, you know the exact answer. So you can go through and check, like you can just consider this instance, outlook overcast, temperature hot, humidity high, wind false, and try to find out what is telling yes or no. And if it's telling yes, and if it's giving the correct answer, it means your model is uh, good. And if it's telling no, if model is bad. So you'll have more than two. Like if you have a big data set, you will have more than two out of bag data set. So in that out of bag data set, you'll find out what is the precision. Out of bag data set is just like what a testing data. You have the know the answer of, and you're gonna guess, like predict the answer from the model and then compare it with the machine, that compare it with the exact value and then try to find out the precision and accuracy. Now, why we exactly use this thing? We exactly use this particular set, like the out of bag data set, to make your model more accurate. Because as I've told you, these are random things. These are completely random things, taking the data set and even considering which attribute to take, which attribute to consider during the splitting of the node is all completely random. So just imagine for the first iteration, we made a data set. Even for the first iteration, most of the time you'll get a good enough model. But if you want to make it more good, what you can do is like you made the first iteration of the model. Now you can use the grid search CV, which is the hyperparameter tuning. I guess you remember, everyone remember this, the hyperparameter tuning. So you can use the grid search CV and compare that. Okay, we made the first model. Now we'll check the accuracy, that what is accuracy, and then depending upon the accuracy, you'll try to like apply different attributes, like the number of trees that you're building, or the max node of a tree, or the minimum node of a tree, the maximum depth of a tree. You can try to figure out that things and sorry, try to figure out the hyperparameters and make your model more accurate. So this is what a decision tree works. So if you'll go to the code, like how to write it a code, because that's the last thing that you have to do, write a code. So the first thing that we need in a code for any machine learning model, NumPy and Pandas. So for this particular data set, this particular example, we are using the Bell Authentication CSV. So the Bell Authentication CSV takes 4 attributes, which is variance, queueness, curtis, and entropy. And on the basis of that, it's telling if that the bell that you got is authenticated, means it's original or faked or forged. So if I'll see what is the exact size of the data set, you have 6,860 rows. Completely fine. So make it as header only, just to see what all things are there. So what we did, we need to split it into decision tree. Fuck. What is this? Hold on for a second, guys. Let me just clean up the mess. Okay, so we have a data set. Now what we have to do, we are going to take and divide it into the training and the testing data set. How to do it? So you know what will be the training data set, variance, skewness, curiosity, and entropy, and what will be the classification data set? This particular number. Now for the training data set, we will have dataset.ilog, all number of rows, and from 0 to 4. It means from 0, even if it will not give 0, it's fine, till 4. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I've told you it includes the starting point and excludes the ending point. So it's going to only consider 0, 1, 2, and 3. So it's not going to take the class one. And y will have the output answer. So dataset.ilog 4. Now the data has been splitted. What to do? The train test split. We have the test size of 0.2. It means 80% will go for the training, 20% will go for the 80% will go for the training, and 20% will go for the testing. Now, to find the random forest classifier, we have to use the library which is known as sklearn.ensemble, because I've told you ensemble technique has bagging and boosting. So all the features of like all the model of ensemble techniques, which is random forest, any boosting algorithm like ADA boost or gradient boosting, XG boost, all the things are in sklearn.ensemble technique. What you do exactly? After importing the random forest classifier, you make an object, random forest classifier. Make it as the object is named as regressor. I shouldn't have named it as regressor only. It's classifier. Okay, fine. It's a name. So it's a random forest classifier. We made an object. Now we have to provide a parameter which will tell you how many exact number of decision tree you want. So for this particular example, we gave 20 decision trees I want in my random forest. You can play with this number, try to make it more, try to make it less. Just make sure if it's gonna be less, your model will not gonna be completely accurate. If it's gonna be really big, your model will take like ages to load. So you have to find out the sweet spot where you have the enough computational power to run the code and you're getting enough accuracy. So find that sweet spot and then fit the model. Now, if you can see, you have so many different hyperparameter tuning that you can do. That okay, random forest classifier bootstrap is defaultly true because that's what you're gonna do. In class weight, you can classify criterion, you can classify the max depth, like what is the max depth you want for the decision trees, max features. So all the hyperparameters that you have for the decision tree is available in random forest, because random forest is just like group sub decision tree. So all the hyperparameters that you're using in a random forest, sorry, in a decision tree is applicable here also. So you specify any of those that you want it to be. Now after the model has been fit, we're gonna predict. So regressor.predict, we gave the X test and saved our answer in Y prediction. We printed the answer, we got 0, 1, 0, 1, whatever. Like 0 stands for the bill has not been, the bill is wrong or forged. 1 stands for the bill is authenticated. So you can see the prediction is this. Now find out the absolute error, root mean squared error, and mean squared error. So for that, what we exactly do? We import the matrix library, and on the matrix library, we provide matrix.mean absolute error, matrix.mean squared error, and square root of matrix.mean squared error, which is Y test, and we provide what? The testing data and the predicted data. We provide that and we get the answer. So as I've told you, all the values which I have talked to you about, the mean absolute error, mean squared error, root mean squared error, the more the number is close to 0, the more accurate your model is. And you can see the numbers are really close to 0. Like in Ridge and Lasso, you have remembered the mean absolute error was like -37 and we're reducing it to -27 or something. Now you can see here the mean absolute error is 0.01, mean squared error is 0.01, root mean squared error is 0.1. So it's really good. Now it's fine till here. Now there's one more concept that you should know now, which is known as the confusion matrix. Now confusion matrix is one of the best representation of your output if your model is a classification problem. It's trying to classify the answers, like giving a classification report. So what is a confusion matrix? First we'll see how to write a confusion matrix. So from sklearn.matrix, we have to import classification report, confusion matrix, and accuracy score. So accuracy score is just exactly the score function. Classification report gives you the precision, recall, and F1 score. And confusion matrix gives you the confusion matrix. Now how to print the confusion matrix? Right, confusion matrix, we provide the X test and Y test and Y prediction. So on the basis of that, you'll get a confusion matrix. To get the classification report also, you just provide y-test and y-prediction. To get the accuracy score also, you just write y-test and y-prediction. Remember, in the model.score function, you provide x-test and y-test. But in accuracy score function, you provide y-test and y-prediction. So these two give the same answer, but the way they take the input are different. So confusion matrix. Now you can see confusion matrix is this. It's a 2 by 2 2 cross 2 matrix. Now we'll see what exactly is a confusion matrix and what exactly it tells you. So confusion matrix is this. Now what disadvantage? So confusion matrix will have a 2 by 2 row, 2 by 2 matrix. Now class 1 and class 2, imagine these two things are as your answers, like yes or no, or 0 or 1, or 2 or 3, or anything. So class 1 is like, imagine class 1 is positive, class 2 is negative. So the row tells you the predicted answer, like what the model predicted, and the the column tells you the predicted answer, and the row tells you the actual answer. Now the classification matrix, the confusion matrix has been divided into 4 parts, which is true positive, false negative, false positive, and true negative. Now what are all those things? Now true positive. True positive stands for all those attributes which are classified yes by the model and they were actually yes. It means in the test values also the answer was supposed to be yes and the model even gave the answer as yes. It means it's true positive. Now it comes false negative. The observation which is positive but it is predicted negative. It means it's a false negative value, that the observation was true but the model considered it as a false value because the model is not completely accurate. So the model was the answer that you're supposed to get was true, but what you got is false. Now the third is false positive. It means the observation was negative and the answer you got was positive. It means that the answer that you're supposed to get was negative or false, but the answer that you got from the machine was positive. So this is known as false positive. Now come true negative. True negative is the even not true negative also is a good situation in which the observation was negative and the model also predicted it as negative. Means you are supposed to get false as the answer. You got false as the answer from the machine also. So these are the 4 things that a confusion report tells you. True positive, it means the answer was true and you got true from the machine. False negative, it means the answer was true but you got false from the machine. False positive, it means the answer was false but the machine gave you true as the answer. True negative, it means the answer was false and the model also gave you false as the answer. It can sometimes it gets a bit confusing, so just go look at this like once in a day and you'll remember it. I would remember it then. Now using this confusion matrix, you can have precision, accuracy, and F1 score. Now how to find precision, accuracy, and F1 score? So to find the accuracy tells you out of all the answers that the model told you, how many are accurate or how many are true. So you can say true positive and true negative are right answers. False positive and false negative are wrong answers. So you'll do the summation of true positive and true negative. It means the right answer divided by all the attributes, or all the guess that the model took. It will give you the accuracy. Now recall. Accuracy is really simple. Now recall. Recall tells you as the ratio of the total number of correctly classified positive examples. It means out of all the positive examples that you had in the model, how much the machine guessed right. It means that your model dataset or the test dataset that you had 10 yes values. So out of the 10 yes values, how much of the percentage is been properly guessed as a yes by the model? And how to do that? To find out how many are yes, how many are completely yes. So in true positive, the answer was supposed to yes and the model gave yes. In false negative, the answer was yes. The answer was yes, but the model gave it as negative. In false positive, the answer was no, model gave it as positive. In true negative, the answer was no, and the model gave it as negative. Model also gave it as negative. Fine enough. So for which values the answer was supposed to be yes? It is true positive and false negative. The answer was supposed to be yes in this. And out of all those things, how many the model gave as yes? True positive. So the ratio of that two will be recall. True positive divided by true positive plus false negative. That these are the numerator will be the true values which are properly guessed true by the model, and the denominator it will be all the true values. So this is recall. Now precision is a bit different, just a bit different. Now recall was out of all the positive values that your model had, or out of all the positive values which was supposed to be positive, the answer was supposed that the answer that you're supposed to get was positive. Out of that, how many were positive? It's recall. Now precision is out of all the positive values that your model told, like your model is telling that 10 values are positive. In that 10 values, how many are really positive? So we'll check which all of these first section. The model is telling that the model is telling that the answer is positive. So in true positive, the machine is telling that the answer is positive. So we'll take this. In false negative, the machine is telling that the answer is negative. So we'll not consider this. In false positive, the machine is telling that the answer is positive. So we'll consider this. In true negative, the machine is telling that the answer is negative. Not consider this. So in these two sections, the model is telling that the answer is true, and precision is out of all. So we'll take this as the denominator. So the total of all the attribute, all the function, all the data set, which is the model is telling that it's true. And on that, how many are actually true? So we'll take true positive here. So we'll take true positive divided by true positive plus false negative. So that's what precision is. There's a really slight difference in recall and precision. If sometimes you forget, you can just mug up the formula. Recall is true positive divided by true positive plus false negative. In precision, the formula is true positive divided by true positive plus false positive. That's it. That's the exact a small difference between recall and precision. So you will learn about accuracy, recall, and precision. Now, if you're telling some like telling you created your model and then you are giving it to someone like in a real world scenario, you're not going to tell that okay, my model has an accuracy of this much, my model has a precision of this much, and my model has a recall of this much. You need to have a single amount, like a single representation of your accuracy. So for that single representation, and to take care of both the recall and precision, we came up with a F1 score. So F1 score is nothing but it's a mix up of both the precision and recall. So how to find the F1 score? We find the recall and the precision and we put it into the function formula of F1 score or F measure, which is 2 into recall into precision divided by recall plus precision. So the answer that you will get will be a harmonic mean or the arithmetic mean. Like harmonic mean in the place of the arithmetic mean. Now what happens is, now if you'll tell anyone which is the F, what will the F measure, it means you're indirectly telling what is the precision and what is your recall. So it's better to use the F1 score to know your accurate model, like get to know the accuracy of model instead of just exactly telling what is the precision, what is the accuracy, and what is the recall. Like you have 3 different attributes, mix it into one and give it the answer. So this is an F1 score. So if we'll just go back to our data, like machine, okay, sorry, here it is. So now you can see, now you can figure out what exactly the decision tree is telling. The decision tree's confusion matrix is telling. So the first position was true positive. So the model is true positive, this is false negative, this is false positive, and this is true negative. So you can see out of all the values, the machine guessed 155 values completely true as positive, like they are right and they are positive, and 117 negative, like no answer, as the right answers. So you can see the first diagonal, the main diagonal is the right answers, like how much right answers your model gave, and the anti-diagonal or the second diagonal gives you the wrong answers, like how much wrong answer your model gave. So the right diagonal, which you can see if we'll go to the page again. So these two terms, which is true positive and true negative, tells you the right answer that the model gave. False positive and false negative, sorry, false positive, false negative and false positive gives you the wrong answer that the model took. So you can see 155 and 170. It means our model predicted 155 true values which are right, and 170 no values which are right. And you can see in false negative there are two values. It means the answer was supposed to be yes, but the answer that you got is no. And you got 1 in false negative. It means in here it's false positive. It means the answer is supposed to be no, but you got it as yes. In this it is false negative. It means the answer was supposed to be yes, but you got it as no. So this is the confusion matrix. Now you do not have to go and like start calculating how to find the precision, recall, and F1 score. Just go and find out the precision. Just give the classification report, and classification report will give you the precision, recall, and the F1 score for both the values, even for zeros and ones. Like it will, instead of taking whole as a whole, it's gonna consider 0 values different and 1 value different. And 0 and 1 means the output, which is the plate, and is yes or no. So for yes, you're getting the precision, like for how much telling that it's a yes value. What is the precision? What is the recall? What is the F1 score? Ignore support. You're never going to use support. And even for the yes value, which is 1, what is the precision? What is the recall? What is the F1 score? So that's what you got in classification report. You also get the accuracy, which is an accuracy or weighted average. You're never going to use these things. Most of the things that you're going to use the precision, recall, and F1 score. Now the accuracy that you're getting is 98%. So you can see you're getting is 98.09 something something. And if you're going to use the same function, which I have told you, regression.score, it's going to give you the exact same answer, 0.9809, exactly the same, but the only difference is because it's a different function, so it takes the input in a different way. We provide x test and y prediction, but if you're going to use the dot score function, you have to provide x test and y test to get the answer. So this is how decision tree, at the random forest works. I guess you have understood the things. So just a small brief. Random forest is just a group of decision trees clubbed together to find the same answer. How the decision trees are different? Because all the decision trees are trained on a bootstrap dataset. What is a bootstrap dataset? It's just a random samples that you got it from the Bain dataset. And during the training of the creation of the tree, you randomly guess which model or which feature you want to split it to, and which one you don't want to consider also. It's completely random. So that's what a decision tree is. So what I've told you in that's what a random forest is. So the thing I've told you in the previous class about the decision tree, that it's highly prone to, what you can say, outliers or overfitting. Because if a model has some more outliers, if your data set has more outliers, it can happen that your model will be overfit or start guessing random specific answers for a specific condition, even though they are not right. So to make it more generalized, we go for random forest. So this is what all it is in random forest. If you have any categorical, so it's not like just okay. There's one question. You said yesterday that decision tree is applied for dataset which has categorical nature, and so for random forest it's not like that. It's just a collection of decision trees only. Yeah. Okay. So the thing about random forest is not limited for classification only. You can also use random forest in regression models. It's not highly suggestible, but you can use it. So that's why if I'll show you the code, previously when the data set that we had was categorical data, even the features that we had is categorical. So we use the label encoder and encoded it into the decision tree. But in the random forest, we have a continuous data set, but still we didn't do anything. We just directly gave it the answer, gave it the data, and still it created a proper decision tree. How it does it? Because random forest is built to consider even the classifier and the regressor. So if you want to use any regression model, like you want to make a, you have a continuous data and you want to use a random forest in that, you can do this. You can easily do it, but instead of classify, just write regression here. Regressor, random forest regressor. So instead of classifier, if I'll write regressor, GRESS. Let me see what's the exact full form. GREE not. So random forest regressor. So if I like the okay, spelling mistake, let's copy this thing. So random forest regression also works. So this is why we can use even the continuous data in random forest. Any other question? Don't tell me he's out again. No, he's not. I hope so. How can I decide n estimators? So n estimators is again a random value that you have to guess through. As I've told you, the more you increase the number of trees, the more accurate or the more general your model will become. But the more number of the more number of trees that you will specify, the more amount of time or the more amount of CPU or the GPU, whatever you are using, computation will go. So it completely depends on how much computation power you have and how much accuracy you want. As you can see here, I've used 20 random trees, so 20 decision trees, and I got accuracy of 98%. So if you're fine with 98% of accuracy, it's fine. Otherwise, you can just increase the number of random forests also. How we can we decide on the number of variables? We don't decide on the number of variables. The only thing that we decide in the number of variables is uh, in the bootstrapping dataset. You just check, as I've told you, in the splitting of the data, training of what formation of a tree, we randomly check which feature to select and which features to ignore. Only that particular cases goes on the number of variables. Even for a large number of variables, you can have a small decision tree, a small random forest. Because if you'll just apply a decision tree, it's a random forest with just one decision tree. So even that works completely fine. One thing that it depends upon is the size of your dataset. If your dataset is small, it's not useful to make big random forests because even your dataset, because if your dataset is small, the bootstrap dataset that you will get will have many redundant values. Even though it's allowed, that's how we make a bootstrap dataset. But we use bootstrap, like we apply the redundant values because we want to like repeat the stuff. That's it. It's not like we just want to exactly copy paste each and every dataset as a bootstrap dataset. So if your dataset is small, make it a small random forest. If your dataset is big, you can go for big random forest also. Any other questions? Okay, looks like everyone is fine now. So if everyone is fine, you can just give me a thumbs up or something. Okay, so more features means more accurate random forest. Uh, yeah, you can say that, but if more features, you're more prone for overfitting also. It's like two-sided sword. because if you're giving many features, yeah, the model will be accurate because you're training it on many of the features. But if any of the features of your data set tilted towards a single point, like what can I say? If you have any attribute or any features which is only telling the answers for a single category, like your model is only just imagine where the data set Outlook. Just imagine we have this particular Outlook feature, and it's only have like more. It's most of the time has only sunny, 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 sunny. There's only like one or two overcast and one or two rain. Other than that, it's completely sunny. So the model will train more on sunny and sunny and sunny and sunny. So if the model will get overcast or rain as the input, so because the Outlook has been trained more on sunny and really less on overcast, so the model will be a bit tilted towards sunny. So if you'll get overcast and rain, there's a high probability that your model will get the wrong answer. So if your data set if you have an ideal data set, okay, as the name suggests, if it's ideal, it's not exist. But if it's an ideal data set, it means you have enough features to classify the objects perfectly, and none of the features is tilted towards one anything. Like you have equal class distribution of all the features. Like you have equal amount of sunny, equal amount of forecast, equal amount of rain, equal amount of temperature. Also, you have everything equal amount. That's a ideal data set that you never get. So that's the thing. Okay, fine. Any other question? Okay, looks like everyone's fine. So today's class will be concluded now. I'll be forwarding the form of the project completion. You have time till Friday. No need to hurry. So the people who are done with the project can just fill the form. And please do fill the form. If you have completed the project but you'll not fill the form, you'll not be considered for evaluation because I'll not even get your GitHub account to evaluate. So please do fill the form. Don't forget it. Okay then. Bye bye class. Happy learning.